And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting. A movement of people, it's like we dancing to the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the poor where the business is. I was so good, life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify. With you and God in time, my best align.
Shine, flies, no time to waste.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, your host and chief White House correspondent. I'm in touch each and every day, and so guess what? You be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and there I am. Also, download the KBLA app to watch us and listen to us live, on demand, or you can just call Alexa. Just call her up. Say, Alexa, play KBLA Talk 1580. And there we are for your listening pleasure. Also, be sure to subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you'll never, ever, ever miss an episode. Now, listen, it is Valentine's Day Eve. It is Valentine's Day Eve. You ready? You ready? You got your Valentine's Day bae gift idea? You have any ideas? What you get in your bae for Valentine's Day? Put it in the group chat. Especially if you're streaming on YouTube, and we might recycle your ideas by the end of the show for those who are in their afternoon drive and haven't even begun to think about what they're going to get their sweet thing on Valentine's Day. So do that, and we'll recycle those ideas. Now, it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. You decide. Kicking us off, NBC News reporting that the Senate has voted to confirm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the health secretary. That's right. The GOP-controlled Senate voted today to confirm RFK Jr., a longtime anti-vaccine activist, to lead the country's most powerful healthcare agency. Kennedy was confirmed as Health and Human Services Secretary on a mostly party line vote of 52 to 48. Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky, broke ranks on yet another of President Trump's cabinet nominees, joining all Democrats in opposition. McConnell, a childhood polio survivor, said that Kennedy had a, quote, record of trafficking in dangerous conspiracy theories and eroding trust in public health institutions. Mr. Kennedy failed to prove he is the best possible person to lead America's largest health agency. That's what McConnell said in his statement. He went on to say that as he takes office, I sincerely hope Mr. Kennedy will choose not to sow further doubt and division, but to restore trust in our public health institutions. Kennedy was sworn in by Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch this afternoon in the Oval Office. President Trump introduced him, saying that there was, quotes, no better person to lead our campaign of historic reforms and restore faith in American healthcare. And so RFK Jr. Taking office as our next Health and Human Services Secretary. Staying in D.C. for just a moment, USA Today reporting that the education department, Trump's education department, says that the agency clearly could not be shut down without Congress. Specifically, President Trump's pick to lead the U.S. Department of Education acknowledged today that her would-be boss can't close the agency without going through Congress. Lyndon McMahon, a billionaire GOP donor and former wrestling industry executive, faced lawmakers on Capitol Hill for a contentious confirmation hearing that was repeatedly disrupted by protesters. Now, though McMahon is likely to be confirmed in the Republican-controlled Senate, she hasn't spoken much publicly since her nomination to head the department, which the president had vowed to shutter. Her testimony provided fresh insights into her views on presidential power and the education department's role in overseeing K-12 schools and colleges, and her take on the ongoing turmoil at the agency she is expected to manage. Look, I have no doubt that Lyndon McMahon will be confirmed as the next Secretary of Education. We need to pay extra close attention to this because this one hits very close to home. What happens in that education department will have a material difference on the quality of education for young people across the country, particularly Black and brown students across the country, English language learners across the country, kids with disabilities across the country. How do I know this? My first job out of college was working as a deputy for a Los Angeles school board member. And so while there's a lot of local control and there's a lot of work that local school board members and state leaders do together in order to ensure that kids are getting the education that they deserve, the federal government does play a role. And if the federal government's looking to step back, who knows what will or who will fill that vacuum. And so we got to pay extra close attention to what's happening and not happening related to our public schools. In other news, there are 5 things that you need to know about mudslide risk as major rains hit LA County. The Los Angeles Times is reporting that a major rainstorm will hit Southern California this week, bringing the risk of debris flow into fire zones. Rain will begin. It's already begun, but the most damaging rains are expected today. 5 things that you should know about the potential of debris flows. Well, number 1, you should know about the risk. When hills are unhealthy, vegetation typically anchors that soil in place, even during heavy storms. But when that protective blanket is burned off, hillsides become vulnerable to erosion, and slopes can come crashing down in a torrent of mud and rocks and dead branches like whitewater rapids. And this creates a major danger to homes and anyone in their path. And so, please be on the lookout. Number 2, you should be preparing for these mudslides. According to the California Department of Conservation, you should be ready for debris flow for 2 to 5 years after a wildfire. So this isn't just about this current storm moving through LA, but we need to be vigilant in the months and years to come. Pay attention to official weather forecasts. Don't rely on what you've seen in past debris flows. Remember to get out before the storm arrives. And if you have to shelter in place, choose a spot in advance and stay alert. Never underestimate a debris flow. And you can sign up for alerts from local emergency management agencies. If you just go to Alert LA County, you can do exactly that. And so those are just a few tips. Aside from there being different types of mudslides, mud flow and debris flow, and the fact that it happens differently, those are just some fast tips for you to hold on to make sure that you're staying safe and that you are indeed keeping your family safe, because we got a long way to go as we recover from the LA wildfires and the destabilizing forces that those fires have created in our communities. Switching gears, when we come forward, I'm really looking forward to our conversation with Dr. Alisha Hines. Dr. Hines is with the UCLA Center for Scholars and Storytellers. And there's this new study that just came out on the American dream. The American dream remains desirable but feels out of reach for Gen Z. That's what it's called. When we come forward, I want to better understand the social psychology of Gen Z. I want to understand, who are they? How do they think? How are they processing some of the events taking place in the world? And I want to touch on some of the high-level findings from this fascinating UCLA study. More with Dr. Alisha Hines of UCLA when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
After you use Bounce Dryer sheets and realize how fresh, soft, less wrinkled, and less staticky your laundry can be, you'll put a sheet on it every time. Like those socks that smell like they've been through a marathon. Put a sheet on it. Or that blanket that's got wrinkles on its wrinkles. Put a sheet on it. Maybe even your chatty coworker who keeps distracting you. Okay, Bounce Dryer sheets can't do it all. But for fresher, softer, better laundry, put a sheet on it with Bounce.
Can your pad absorb everything and stay fresh? Always Radiant with Flex Foam can. Get up to 0 leaks, 0 odor, and 0 feel. Because Flex Foam is the only pad with a flexible foam core. You heard me, foam. Always Radiant is so thin, it feels like nothing, yet protects like nothing else. Can your pad do that? For up to 100% leak-free protection, try Always Radiant to see what Flex Foam can do for you.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hit me! National News, The Consequence. Informed opinion. And analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte. Before we get to our guest, just a little bit of breaking news. NBC News reporting that the Trump administration is telling federal agencies to fire probationary employees. President Trump's administration began a mass firing of federal workers today. The Office of Personnel Management officials met with agency leaders today and advised them to dismiss probationary employees, according to a person familiar with the matter. What does this mean? It means that hundreds of thousands of people could potentially be affected. This according to data from the Office of Personnel Management, although the exact number at this hour is unclear. It will be exact number will be terminated. The folks who will be terminated is not immediately clear. Employees who have probationary status have typically been with the federal government for only 1 or 2 years before all their civil service protections have kicked in. And so this is a late breaking development as reported by NBC News. We'll continue to keep our eye on this because, of course, we know that federal employees don't just live and work in Washington, D.C. Federal employees are across the country. According to some estimates, the state of California, where our home station is, has somewhere around 150,000 federal employees. And so how many of this overall number are folks that fall into this probationary period of 1 to 2 years? That is unclear, but this is the latest news coming from Washington. Now, switching gears, I want to welcome Dr. Alisha Hines to the show. How are you, Dr. Hines?
Hi, I'm doing all right. I don't know how you kind of report on all this every day, but it's a lot to take in. But, okay, considering the circumstances.
That's right. That's right. Look, the Serenity Prayer is my go-to prayer as we all try to make sense out of this moment. I should mention that Dr. Hines is the director of research and leads the research team that oversees all studies conducted by the Center for Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA. She earned her PhD in history and African American studies from Duke University and is a former faculty member of Wake Forest University's history department. First things first, Dr. Hines, tell us about the Center for Scholars and Storytellers. I think a lot of our leaders, learners, and listeners may be surprised to learn that there is such a center that exists, period, let alone right there at UCLA.
Yeah, I think it for me too, when I learned about it, I was very excited about it and intrigued and interested in it. So the center was founded about 6 years ago. Our founder CEO is Dr. Yalda Uls, who is a world-renowned research scientist and also a former film executive. So she had a long career in entertainment prior to earning her PhD in psychology at UCLA. And in adolescent development, and wanted to bridge these two worlds. And so the center kind of sits between academia and the entertainment industry with the mission of advancing, positive content for adolescents. So we like to use the example of like Sesame Street, how in the 70s, it was like suddenly people thought like content for kids should be educational and advance their development at that stage. And so the kind of concept of the center is that we should be doing the same thing for adolescents at this very important developmental stage. So we try to bring the research insights from, an academic perspective and translate that and communicate that for content developers, writers, producers, executives, et cetera, so that they can make content that's appropriate for young people and also authentic to them, resonant to them, and advances their positive development as well.
Well, fascinating research. I'm sure we could talk a lot about the canon of research that you all are building, but I want to zero in on this study that certainly caught my eye, and it relates to the American dream. This report came out just this past January. A lot of top lines here, but basically you all sought to get a sense of how Gen Z views the American dream. In fact, the report is called "The American Dream Remains Desirable but Feels Out of Reach for Gen Z." Before we launch into some of the high-level insights, define Gen Z and give us a few examples of how Gen Z sort of thinks of the world differently compared to, millennials like me, geriatric millennials like me, Gen X and boomers.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting question, right? Because there's been so much written about Gen Z and so much, so many ideas floating around about Gen Z, but it's defined, from the Pew Research Center currently is right now they're between the ages of 14 and 27. And so they're different in a lot of ways, right? So their demographic makeup is entirely different. We're moving toward a majority minority demographic in the United States. They're kind of experimenting with and identifying themselves differently in terms of their gender and sexuality. They have different ideas about college and career paths and things like that. So they're really kind of reframing and reshaping some of those more traditional, you would say maybe concepts that guided social and political life for a long time. And this is something that we really wanted to probe through this research study. And a little bit of background about that, this kind of comes from the process that we use to do a lot of our research, which is involving stakeholders in the process of developing research questions. So we bring entertainment folks into the room, young people, researchers, community leaders, and organizations to talk about a set of topics and think about a research question that we can ask that would be useful for content creators in this space. And so from that conversation came this question of like, okay, if Gen Z is so different from previous generations, and we're looking at them like these foreign kind of like alien, young people, then what concepts do hold and what things are changing, in their purview or from their perspective. And so the question that arose was if they think the same about this traditional concept of the American dream. Are they still pursuing that in their lives? Is that something that they still desire? Or are they thinking entirely differently, about that? And so the findings kind of suggest, as you mentioned, that that concept still holds for them.
Wow. And so, for Gen Z folks, talk to me about some of the world events that have shaped their worldview. As a geriatric millennial, I can tell you world events like 9/11.
Yeah.
It changed the way that we travel. It created the whole, war on terrorism that seems unending. These forever wars, have become fixtures in our foreign policy, for example. We know that social media, and the internet, transformed on our watch. Remember when you had Bill Clinton and Al Gore talking about we're going to create the super, what was it? The super information highway?
Yeah.
Right. And so these were things, and certainly there are artists that sort of shape the time, shape the culture. But for Gen Z, what were those world events, and who are those people who sort of shaped their worldview?
Yeah, there's so many things that come to mind, and a few that always stick to me, because we did a study recently prior to the election to consider how young people were thinking about Kamala Harris, for example, or not for example, but as a candidate, and if they were considering her identity, right? And like if that was something that was shifting because they are so diverse among themselves. But that sort of raised the point that they grew up with a Black president in office, right? Which is kind of different. It's very different from previous generations and something that we considered, right, as like, this is a sea change sort of like in politics in a way, but this is something that they grew up as kind of the norm. And the other thing that comes to mind is the pandemic, of course. And you think about the shifts that they had to, and this is a wide age range, right? From teenagers right now to young adults. But so depending on where they were in school, they may have experienced some learning loss and not having the opportunity to go to college, in their freshman year, or having to leave their campuses and not having those kinds of in-person relationships that they had before. And then social media, of course, is something that, we're still trying to understand about the impact that social media is having on their development, their brain development, neurologically. And then we can see those impacts in terms of their mental health in a lot of cases, although social media does support their mental health in a lot of ways. But that complex relationship is something they're trying to navigate at a really challenging developmental time as well. So I would say in many ways, they are very different from us, but we're kind of still seeing what the outcomes and what the implications of that are.
And there were two highlights, two of many that certainly caught my attention in the report. Speaking of social media shaping perceptions, according to your study, 50% of respondents say that social media has the biggest influence on how they view the American dream when it comes to movies, TV shows, news, podcasts, other forms of media. And then there was another figure about happiness and how happiness is harder to come by. 74% say it's harder for their generation to achieve happiness compared to previous generations. What's the relationship between those two insights? How social media is shaping perception, yet happiness is harder to come by.
Yeah, so I think they are very connected, and I'm glad that you interpreted it that way, because I kind of do as well. So I think on the one hand, young people have a very complicated relationship to social media. I think people often think of social media as one thing, and it's negative, and it's giving them, negative representations and things that are impacting their body image and their self-image. But at the same time, young people are getting so much information from social media. They're learning new skills, they're connecting with different people and different communities and learning hobbies and things like that. And so it also has these positive impacts. But I do think it is connected to that finding that they think other people can achieve the American dream more than they can achieve it themselves, because they are seeing people do this online, right? You're seeing people portray their highlights, what people always talk about, their highlights of their life. You're traveling, you're buying something expensive, and that's kind of what's elevated, I think, on social media. And that's also impacting their perception of the American dream. But we can say more, but I know we got it.
Well, when we come forward, we're going to say a whole lot more. There are a lot of really important insights in this report that was just released in January 2025 from our friends over at UCLA, the UCLA Center for Scholars and Storytellers. The report is called The American Dream and how it remains desirable but feels out of reach for Gen Z. We're going to drill down on more of these important insights when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai and thrilled to have Dr. Alisha Hines with us right here.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. President Trump has announced new tariffs matching what other countries charge the U.S. He says value-added taxes will count as tariffs. The move follows a report showing inflation rose to 3% in January. Black Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is warning of heavy rain, flooding, and power outages. Evacuation orders took effect Thursday morning, with crews placing sandbags and prepping for rescues. 2 to 6 inches of rain are expected by Friday. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is touting record affordable housing in the city, with over 14,600 households leaving shelters, a 24% increase. His plan aims to add 100,000 homes in Manhattan over the next decade. And shows are being canceled at the Kennedy Center after President Trump took over. Issa Rae has announced on Instagram she's canceling her sold-out show, citing an infringement on the center's inclusive values. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
Highland Park, there's been some issues with flooding like there is in a lot of places this afternoon. Northbound coming up on Avenue 60. Caltrans crews were out there at last check with some lanes blocked off because of this flooding. And we are seeing big delays getting out of Montecito Heights away from Avenue 43. Southbound seems to be doing all right. So that's good news. The drive on the 210 westbound in Pasadena slows from Sierra Madre. You remain on the brakes ahead all the way into La Crescenta, and the eastbound side of the 210 slow out of Pasadena from Mountain in stretches to the 215.
If you or someone you know is affected by the Los Angeles wildfires, you are not alone. No matter how sad, scared, or heartbroken you feel, Cal Hope is here for you and all those affected by the devastating wildfires. Find free, safe, and confidential mental health support at calhope.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The capital of women's college basketball is in Los Angeles tonight. 2 of the nation's top 10 programs are right here in our city, and they're meeting up tonight at a sold-out Galen Center. Undefeated UCLA, number 1 in the country since late November, faces number 6 USC in a game that is certain to attract huge interest nationwide. This is the first time UCLA and USC are playing each other as members of the Big Ten Conference. In their first year in the Big Ten, both teams have been dominant with a combined 22-1 record in the conference. UCLA is 11-0 in the Big Ten. Interesting game for USC sophomore Juju Watkins, the All-American from Compton. Watkins is shooting only 31% in the last 4 games, including just 16% on three-pointers. USC Nation hopes Watkins kicks her slump to the curb tonight. 7 p.m. tip-off for the showdown, live TV coverage on the Peacock channel. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and just delighted to be in conversation with Dr. Alisha Hines. Dr. Hines is the director of research over at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA. Who knew that we had a Center for Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA? I'm going to have to pay you an office visit, Dr. Hines.
Oh, please do. Please do.
This is incredible.
You have to come to one of our events.
Look, sign me up. I'm there. I'm there. We've been talking about this really thought-provoking study that UCLA just released in January on the American dream. They say the American dream remains desirable, but feels out of reach for Gen Z. We know that Gen Z made up a lot of headlines especially during the 2024 election cycle. There are a number of major brands that are trying to not just understand Gen Z, but they're trying to, really ingratiate themselves to Gen Z. If you thought the consumer power of millennials, 100 million strong, if you thought that our consumer power was something, just hold your hat, because Gen Z may overtake millennials in that regard. In this study, there were a lot of takeaways, Dr. Hines, and I want to draw our attention to socioeconomic representation, how you all say it matters to Gen Z. In fact, more than half of young people, 54%, say that they want to see more characters dealing with finances or money-related issues in movies and TV shows. And so I take that to mean that Gen Z is prepared to throw down when it comes to defending diversity, equity, and inclusion. Am I reading that insight right?
Oh, yes, I would say absolutely. On the whole, I think I would say the outlier. So we really report on like statistically significant results. But in many of the questions, you can see that the major differences fall between those who identify themselves as financially free. And then the kind of scale from there goes to folks who meet basic expenses with some left over, just meet expenses, meet something with nothing left over, and then they don't meet their expenses. And that was how we sort of segmented the survey population for the questions. And that led to some really interesting findings in terms of how they view the American dream, if they identify with it, if they think it's achievable for themselves, if they think they will have, a better outcome than their parents did. But I think that outlier is the financially free, and kind of beyond that, they're very interested in seeing financial struggles and challenges and characters overcoming that in their TV and movies. And they also want to see just a more authentic representation of their socioeconomic, reality depicted on screen, versus these kind of glamorized, stories about people who just make it and make it super big and are super wealthy. And that's not authentic to their experience. And it's not something that is resonant with them.
Now, one of the things I'm trying to reconcile from some of the insights in this study is, Gen Z's interest in reality TV. So I get that on one hand, you got over half of young people who say that they want more realistic portrayals of finances in TV shows and movies, and characters navigating money-related challenges. And they're not looking for, the glamorized, effortless lifestyles that are often depicted. But when you think of the popularity of reality TV, of, the, docu arts, if you will, part of that is being driven by the thirst for content from Gen Z. And so, which one is it?
Yeah, I would say a couple things about that. The first is that I don't know that it's as popular among that age group as it is among maybe our age group. So we do ask them kind of what genres they're most interested in. And this most recent study that we did, we found that fantasy came out on top. Fantasy content came out on top. And many of them are watching less TV and movies than many of the previous generations. So they're playing video games often, they're on social media, and they're watching a lot of YouTube as well, and often find those spaces as being more authentically representative of their experience and the world that they see around them. And they go to TV and movies sometimes for different things. Sometimes it's for escapism, and just to kind of check out, from something, or they're going to the movies because there's something's come out that they want to see with their friends. But I do think it's right to point out the popularity of reality TV, but I think it may fall even in that fantasy kind of like escapism realm for a lot of folks who are watching it, Gen Z and beyond.
Right before you joined me on air, I had shared some breaking news coming out of Washington related to federal employees, those that are, sort of in their the early period of their employment, being let go, reports of them being let go by the Trump administration. Your study found that approximately 1 in 3 adolescents live in families at less than twice the federal poverty line. And over 50% of Gen Zers said that they're extremely worried about not having enough money, and almost half report holding both a job and a side hustle to make ends meet. Do you have any predictions on how some of these reported actions from the Trump administration in terms of purging, federal employees, how that might play with Gen Z, particularly Gen Z voters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have a lot to see there, and on just the high level is that it's creating a lot of uncertainty, I think, for young people. And we know that in the election, they voted primarily with economic issues being their number one concern, right? They're concerned about the economy and the job market. And that's exhibited in this study as well, when they're reporting the economic barriers are the number one barrier to their access to the American dream. And this is, we asked them this with many other barriers, like health-related barriers or institutional kind of structural barriers like racism, things like that. And they all selected, or many of them selected, that economic barriers was the number one. And so I think as these things are coming out of the White House, and we're going to see the fallout in terms of like student loans, for example, or, what are the interest rates going to look like? Or, what is the job? What are tariffs going to do to prices, grocery prices and things like that? We have housing prices that have, skyrocketed and rent prices that have skyrocketed. So I think they've seen all this and they want to see, they want some resolve, they want some support there, and they want to see changes in that. And so if they don't, then then we'll have to answer to that. For who we voted for.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the price of eggs, going up and up and up. I was just at the grocery store earlier this week. $4.99
eggs.
$4.99 for the smallest carton. Almost $14 for the biggest carton of eggs. And then I went over to the CVS to pick up a few things. And I'm in the deodorant aisle. When did deodorant get to be so expensive? Call me crazy. It's giving Make America Funky again. I mean, that's what it's looking like. $16 for some deodorant.
It's insane.
And it's not like the packaging has grown. And so people are paying attention to it. Certainly Gen Z is paying extra close attention to it. In our remaining minutes, Dr. Hines, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, how did you decide to channel your interest in history and your studies in history into research at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably longer than we have time for. But I, had a really fulfilling career as a sort of traditional academic. I went straight, I got a master's, got a PhD, and started immediately after teaching at Wake Forest. And I just realized that I wanted to do more. I wanted to make kind of a different impact with my research skills. And I wanted to kind of speak to current events in our current world that we're living in. And I also have always been, love the media space. My sister's a filmmaker. So I've always been exposed to that. And so it just felt like this really interesting and great mix between my interests and my skill set. And so it's really research translation and research communication is something that I'm super passionate about and I get to do at the center.
Well, that is incredible work. Look, I'm a Trojan for life. And so, me complimenting UCLA.
Got you. Heard.
I'm glad we're recording. That's all I'm saying. Our thanks to Dr. Alisha J. Hines over at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers at UCLA. If you have a moment, check out this study. It's really interesting. It's called The American Dream Remains Desirable but Feels Out of Reach for Gen Z. If you're trying to get to know Gen Z and their hopes and fears and aspirations, this is a great place to start, especially for those content creators out there that are trying to connect with Gen Z consumers.
Yeah, we got a ton of resources for you if you're interested. Tons of reports to look at.
Well, we can't wait to have you back. This was not nearly enough time, but when we come forward, it's time for the quiet part out loud. I'll give you a spoiler alert. The First Amendment is alive and well. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Fatherhood includes being present during pregnancy and beyond, supporting your partner, advocating for your baby, and ensuring a healthy birth. Black fathers play a key role in reducing maternal and infant health disparities, and your involvement starts during pregnancy. Join the free AIM Fatherhood Program today and learn how to support your partner, advocate for your baby's health, and connect with other fathers committed to healthier births. Visit blackinfantsandfamilies.org/fatherhood to get started.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go: shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms: irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
I've just been feeling so sluggish lately. You should try the Metamucil 2-week challenge. The Metamucil 2-week challenge? Yeah, Metamucil 4-in-1 fiber helps trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Start your daily routine now, and in 2 weeks, you could be feeling great. Well, it's been 2 weeks. How you feeling? Lighter and feeling great.
If you want to feel lighter by promoting digestive health, sign up to take the 2-week challenge at Metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. It's about that time for the quiet part out loud. Right before the break, I'd share with you just a little bit of a spoiler alert, saying that the First Amendment is alive and well, at least as it relates to this particular case. We know that our friends at ProPublica are reporting that a defamation lawsuit against an author of a ProPublica article ends after the court sides with the writer. A multi-year defamation lawsuit sparked by a ProPublica article, it officially ended on January 24th, marking a final victory in the case for its author, a freelance journalist, William D. Cohen. A New York State appeals court had ruled in his favor in 2023, and the state's highest court left that ruling in place in September 2024, declining to hear the appeal. Now, the plaintiff ultimately agreed to pay Cohen certain defense costs and did not pursue a long shot appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. And with that, the parties concluded the cases. But the suit, it stemmed from this July 2020 article that was written by Cohen The article was titled "The Bizarre Fall of the CEO of Coach and Kate Spade's Parent Company." Jide Zeitlin, the subject of the article, sued Cohen in 2021, claiming that he was defamed by the story. That's what he claimed. The article, it chronicled Zeitlin's improbable rise from modest circumstances as the son of a Nigerian maid to becoming a Goldman Sachs partner and Fortune 500 CEO. It also examined his downfall as allegations of an extramarital affair with a woman he photographed helped lead to his resignation from Tapestry, the corporation that owns Coach and a lot of prominent brands. Look, it's no secret that the press is under enormous scrutiny. Dare I say, the press is under attack. That the First Amendment is being challenged at every twist and turn. And sometimes when people just don't like the story that you're reporting, sometimes when people don't like how they are portrayed or characterized, there are a lot of people who aren't shy about serving you with a lawsuit. And so imagine the effect that this has, particularly on independent journalists. If you work for a big media company, a legacy media company, and for example, an NBC, a CBS, a Fox, they have huge legal departments that stay ready for folks to come at them with all sorts of cases, including those that might just be frivolous or people who just might be looking for a quick payday. But for independent journalists, you don't have the muscle of legacy media outlets, legal departments fighting for you. And as you can tell in this story, this first started back in 2021. It's now 2025, right? And so this takes up a lot of time, a lot of energy, and whatever resources you're able to muster in pushing back. And so this is a rare example. And hopefully we'll see more examples of this, of folks who engage in rigorous journalism, cover their bases, their First Amendment rights being affirmed in the courts. And this was also a Black journalist. And make no mistake about it, if folks are pushing back against the First Amendment, people are pushing back against journalism at large, then you better believe Black journalists and other journalists from marginalized communities are under even more scrutiny, under more pressure, especially when we're reporting on stories that people don't want us talking about. And so, bravo to the Black journalist that was victorious here. William D. Cohen, representing for freelance journalists everywhere. We love to see it. We love to see it. You know what else we love to see? We love to see all of you celebrating Valentine's Day with your friends or your bae or some combination of both. So what you doing? What you doing on Valentine's Day? Where are you going? And it's Valentine's Day weekend at that. What are you going to be streaming? Right? Have you put together your Valentine's Day playlist yet? And so, I'm sure you'll find some way to show some love to the people in your life, including, our moms and our aunties, and, happy early Valentine's Day to my mom and my aunties as well. But listen, don't get so overwhelmed with having to program, the most over the top Valentine's Day celebration. I'm of the belief we celebrate Valentine's Day every day. Every day. We don't need a holiday to celebrate Valentine's Day, but it makes it a little extra special. And so be prepared to do something nice, as simple as a card, right? One of the things that my mom used to do when we were kids, and I'm sure she's gonna have a big old smile on her face as she hears me telling this story. One of the things she used to do when we were kids is she would write, Happy Valentine's Day, love mom, in her lipstick on the bathroom mirror. So when we got ready for school, we would see the Happy Valentine's Day. It was a sweet gesture. It was a sweet gesture, right? And so, I'm not of the belief that you've got to spend a bunch of money in order to have a memorable Valentine's Day. Sometimes it's the simple things. Sometimes it's the simple things just to, remind people that you're thinking of them and to just lean into that Valentine's Day spirit. Now, if you're looking for a great restaurant recommendation, if they're not book solid, you may want to make a reservation at Somerville in South LA. This is to everybody who's in LA. Because all I know is the last time I was at Somerville, I had a marvelous experience. Great drinks, great food, great ambiance. I think that might be the move for Valentine's Day. So as you're in your afternoon drive, you might want to pick up your phone and make a reservation at Somerville and show Issa Rae the love that she is showing for us. When we come forward, we're going to stretch out with our guest next hour. If you are a fan of or enlightened by emotional intelligence, and if you're looking to strengthen your own command of your emotional intelligence, you definitely want to tap into this next conversation. You are listening to and streaming a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. The White House says 75,000 federal workers took the Trump administration's buyout offer, though 200,000 were expected. The deadline passed Wednesday, and a judge lifted a pause on the program. African-American House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries says Republicans walked away from spending talks, risking a government shutdown. He criticized them for abandoning bipartisan discussions on government funding. Rescue crews are continuing to search Lake Oconee for missing Atlanta coach Jerry Jones, who was Black, after his empty boat was found Saturday.